and welcome to our first AngularConnect webinar, which we're calling Pre-Connect. It's a opportunity to get connected with some of our speakers before AngularConnect itself. And just let's say hello quickly to all of our panelists today. So we've got Stephen. Hello.
Hello.
Joey.
Hello.
Kim.
Hello.
Tracy.
Hi.
There she is. And Max.
Yep. Hi.
Hello. Welcome. Thank you so much for coming on today. Just to give you an idea, if you're watching live and you don't know much about AngularConnect, I'm sure you do. So AngularConnect for me is all about connecting people. So it's connecting developers together who come as attendees, but also the opportunity for developers to connect to industry experts like we have here today. So this pre-connect is like an extension of that. And hopefully we can do some more of these in the future. I just need to remember to tell you, because I was told by the AngularConnect team that I would always forget, we have moved venue. Don't go to the old venue. We have a fantastic new venue this year, which is right slap bang in the middle of London. It's right near to Westminster. It's called the QE2 Centre. It's going to be really cool because we're so close to all of the real action that happens right in the centre. But Josh was just telling me this morning, he's saying, I know there's going to be people who'll turn up in the Docklands in the wrong place. And so I'm going to reiterate that again at the end, just in case. But hopefully by the time we get to September, everyone will be really on board with that. I'm just going to go around everyone and find out a bit more about them, and let them tell you a bit more about what they're doing at the moment, and also what they're going to be talking about at AngularConnect. But as I said, this is an opportunity for the people in the community, attendees, to connect with us. So if you're watching along live, then we actually have a Q&A feature on this conferencing app. And I'm hoping that all of the attendees are going to ask questions, and we're going to take a few of them and pass them through to these wonderful guests. You'll get your first opportunity to interact, which is what AngularConnect is all about. I can see the first question says, Kim living in the forest. Let's go to Kim first. So welcome, Kim.
Thank you.
Are you living in the forest?
I am currently on vacation in upstate New York in the Adirondack Mountains. So kind of at the moment.
Well, thank you so much for coming on even in the middle of your holiday. That's dedication for you. Thank you very much. Hopefully it's not going to take up too much of your vacation.
Yeah,
looks beautiful. Can we join you?
Sure. I think we're going to climb a mountain right after this. So.
Fantastic.
Okay, if you can just wait like 4 or 5 hours, Steve and I'll hop on a flight. We'll make it there.
Got it.
So I was going to say, you didn't look like you're in Ann Arbor, which I think is where you're normally based. Is that right?
I live outside of Ann Arbor, so I do actually live in the country, even when I'm at home.
So my little tidbit of information that I found out was I think Joey used to work in Ann Arbor as well.
I did, yeah. When I started, I worked in the Google office in Ann Arbor. Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah. So you can exchange cool places to go in Ann Arbor after this. So Kim, I was looking through the past speaker list, and I didn't actually see you on there, but I know that you have been to AngularConnect before. I think you were involved in the NG Girls before. Is that right? Yes.
Yes. So I have not spoken at AngularConnect proper, but I helped out with Angular Girls and was a mentor for that, and did like a small talk for just NG Girls. And then I was able to attend the conference, which was awesome.
It's brilliant. So we're going to be running NG Girls again this year. It's really important for us that we help build up some of the people who don't necessarily fall into the tech business so easily. And it's always been a great opportunity for women in the UK and Europe to get exposure to Angular and experts like yourself. So thank you for doing that. Maybe you might pop in again this year and say hello to them.
I would love to, if my flights, if the way I organize my flights allows for it.
So tell us a little bit about what your talk is this year.
So my talk is on the science of authenticating Angular apps. So it's about authentication in single-page applications. The first half is basically like an introduction to authentication in web apps as well as in SPAs. And then the second half of the talk is how you can implement authentication specifically with the Angular platform. So what in Angular helps you to make authentication easier?
I've always found that this topic is one of those ones that everyone agrees is really important, but then they just don't actually quite get it. They can't get their head around all of the different aspects of security. And even if they do, then maybe they completely miss it, and then they end up implementing something which they don't really understand, and they do it wrong, and then it's actually worse or not secure, and it's sort of a false sense of security.
Yes. I think that's a huge issue. It's an issue that I struggled with a lot before I sort of came to work at Auth0. And I think that a lot of the people who actually work in security and in authentication have come around to doing so because they've seen these issues firsthand and experienced them themselves. So yeah, it's definitely my hope to try to alleviate some of that for people who are faced with the challenge of authenticating their applications and understanding it a little better.
And I'm hoping you're going to say yes here, but is the Angular framework been helpful? Like you're saying that you're going to talk about some of the aspects of the Angular framework?
Yes, absolutely. And RxJS especially, I think.
Oh, right.
The Angular platform itself and then features of RxJS also can be really, really helpful for auth.
Oh, brilliant. So let's move on to the next person. So I was thinking maybe we could talk to Joey next. He's the first timer amongst us. I think everyone else has been to AngularConnect. Oh no, Joey was telling me just before we started that actually this isn't his first AngularConnect, but as a speaker maybe.
Yeah, this will be the second time attending or being at AngularConnect, but the first time speaking. Actually, AngularConnect 3 years ago maybe, it was the first conference that I ever attended. So it was a very overwhelming experience just because I didn't know how to attend a conference. Looking back, I'm really excited now, knowing how conferences go and knowing how AngularConnect is run and being able to participate. I'm really excited for it. But yeah, I technically have been to AngularConnect.
So I'm interested that you were overwhelmed as an attendee. This is not something that we aim for as a conference organizer. So I'm interested in what it was about the conference. Was it just the unknown, or were you expecting to suddenly have to be dragged up onto stage and answer questions?
Well, so I attended the conference because I actually participated with helping create the adaptive, responsive design examples for AngularJS material. And in participating in that, Naomi and Jeremy offered to let me come to AngularConnect where we actually brought them up. And so I was I didn't think it would happen, but the whole time I was like, what if somebody has a question about how this works? And I don't really know how it works. I'm so new to Angular. I'm so new to all of this. So it was just it was just this fear that was completely unfounded. And then that made me so nervous that everything became overwhelming. But if I strip that all away, it was not overwhelming, but I was just already so amped up that it was a lot. So I'm very excited now, knowing that it won't be overwhelming because it is a well-run conference that I won't have that problem this time.
That's awesome. So I've seen you've been at Google for quite a number of years, but I've only really seen you on the Angular sort of side of things for maybe a year or so. Can you tell us about your journey? Obviously, you did some AngularJS.
Yeah.
Old days.
So,
how did you get to where you are now, and what are you up to now? Yeah,
so I started at Google, actually working in internal support at Google, so supporting Googlers like ourselves, not the public-facing stuff. And so one of the big goals in any support environment is to kind of automate your own job away if you can. The ideal version being you don't have to exist. So a lot of that is building out web tools that we would have to do whatever tasks or track things. And so in building web apps to do that, I actually, that's how I learned development work, was at Google here. And started using AngularJS from that, and then found out, or got the opportunity to work on the AngularJS responsive stuff with Jeremy and Naomi. And so I was doing that, and that's kind of how I started in Angular. And then I just kind of never left in terms of participating in the AngularJS material stuff. And then I got the opportunity to like kind of have like a year-long tryout where I was free labor for the Angular team. My old team would pay for me while I worked on the Angular team directly, and then I actually transferred over to the Angular team a year and a month ago, actually. So yeah, so for the last year and a month, I've been officially working on the Angular components. So working like making both the CDK and the material design components. And then just in the last few weeks, I have switched tasks, so to speak, and I am now leading the Angular team's developer infrastructure and tooling efforts. So the developer infrastructure and tooling for the Angular team itself. So our CI and our like local build environments, and kind of trying to make us as productive as we can be.
And so I guess that's what you're going to be talking about. That your talk mentions productivity and
yeah.
CI. I think so.
Yeah, so that was kind of how I convinced Igor mostly, but the team to kind of let me take on this role, is that I really want to streamline kind of some of the ways that we go through managing our work and our PRs and our issues, so that we can even better than we already do engage with the community. And so that's actually what my talk is going to be about, is about how we do it currently and kind of some of the ideas I have going forward. Hopefully be able to kind of show as much as I can the tooling and processes that we have, because I think it's something that's valuable for everybody to see. You know, Angular has so much so much community interaction that it's something that can be really valuable to see how we interact with people on GitHub and try and foster as much engagement as we can.
Yeah, the last time I saw a statistic, it was like 60% of our commits did not come from the team at Google. So yeah. that is like, we're in a really fortunate place to be in that, but that means going through hundreds and hundreds of PRs and thousands of issues, and that's a huge task.
Yeah, yeah. If you look at components, it's even higher.
Yeah. I remember with AngularJS, we actually had to declare issue bankruptcy at least 2 times, where we just said, look, we just cannot cope. We're just going to close like any issue that's over 3 months old, and then if no one complains, then we'll assume that it's okay. But it was a terrible thing to do, but it was just one of those things. We just could not cope. We didn't have the capacity to do that. So I'm really excited to hear about some of the ideas you've got, and hopefully we'll be able to streamline things going forward.
Yeah, always trying to guard against trying to get to that point.
Yeah, and I noticed that the Angular repository has got like so many more issues and pull requests than even the AngularJS repository ever had. I mean, already it's just like 10 times as many or something ridiculous. So it's a monster. Well, yeah, it's really great. Looking forward to seeing you at the conference and seeing your talk. So you're very welcome. Let's say hello to Max. Hi, Max. Just while he gets his microphone going, I'm very pleased to have Max here. He's actually representing our premier sponsor this year, which is AG Grid. So we're really happy to have them take over the sponsorship this year. And Max has been giving, well, he only actually gave one talk at AngularConnect last year, but it was a complete sellout. In fact, I seem to remember it was standing room only in the room. And I guess I was slightly surprised at that, because the topic was something like RxJS schedulers. This is like quite a niche area. I was surprised so many people were interested in it.
I think it was with change detection, something related to change detection.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Yeah, but nevertheless, it was still too technical, pretty technical. Yeah.
Yeah. Were you surprised that so many people were interested in it?
No. I think, yeah, I wasn't. But because I think there are a lot of questions about change detection. You can see them on Stack Overflow, or like the articles that I've written, the most popular ones are related to change detection. So, and there are actually a lot of, so this topic is by itself quite big, so you can break it down to many components, and each component in itself is a pretty big topic. So it's like vast area. Like dependency injection is also similar. It's also pretty big. So I assume there would be a lot of interest.
So I guess that leads you on to the talk you're giving this year, which is, again, it's a very deep dive topic.
Yeah. So this year I will be talking about what makes Angular so fast. And yeah, I will be talking about three things. Like I'll touch upon how the code is written inside the framework. I'll speak a little bit about monomorphism, which is a technique that JavaScript developers use to optimize code execution inside virtual machine, inside VM. And then I'll also talk a little bit about data structures that I use inside Angular. You know, there's this question you can see on Twitter all the time. Why do I need to learn all this, you know, computer science topics, data structures, algorithm? Where's it even used? So I'm going to show people that there are places in web development where you use that, and in particular frameworks. And yeah, and also I will try to explain why Angular has compiler. I asked that question on Twitter. I got some responses, but they are valid. But I think the general idea is that, well, they have the compiler because they need to convert HTML syntax to JavaScript. But I don't think that's the main goal. Why frameworks have compilers? Because we have frameworks that don't have compilers, like React. So I want to, you know, explain that.
See, this kind of talk is really exciting for me because I'm the kind of person who likes to really just dig down into the code. I mean, the reason I got into Angular, like the working with the team, was that I was just using it like the vast majority of people do, but I just couldn't help myself but sort of open up the box and like start pulling bits out and seeing what happens and trying to get my head around the internals of the code. And certainly in AngularJS, we had a compiler there, which still blows my mind. I still struggle to understand it. In a different way, because it was full of closures and other complicated JavaScript things. So it's really fascinating for me. I definitely will be coming along to see this talk, see your take on it. I think it fits really nicely with the other articles that I've seen in your blog series as well.
Yeah, it's like what I'm specialized on, because like there will be a lot of talks how to use Angular and best practices, and this one will be about, you know, that will hurt your brain.
So do you think that these things are actually going to be relevant to developers? I'm thinking like AG Grid is super fast, right? And that's one of its selling points.
Yeah.
Do the developers at AG Grid like spend a lot of time thinking about this kind of performance optimizations?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, in fact, AG Grid is itself a framework. Niall talked about that at a few conferences. We have our own dependency injection system. We have our own components design. So it's basically, it's a huge framework. It's designed after some Java infrastructure, because Niall and guys come from Java background, enterprise, you know. Yeah, we think a lot about that inside, and yeah. I think I want to write a few articles, and I have this plan about how AG Grid works inside from their architectural standpoint.
That's interesting, because I think Mishko came from a Java background as well. And, a lot of his work is similarly, you know, been about performance from a really sort of theoretical point of view, understanding like some of these aspects and bringing that to bear on the framework on top of his sort of architectural ideas as well.
Yeah,
yeah, great. Well, we're looking forward to seeing your talk as well.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for coming along. Hello, Tracy. It's wonderful to see you again. I don't want to say an old hat at being at AngularConnect, but you've been to almost all AngularConnects now, both as a speaker and also as an MC. It's always great to see you there. Are you giving a talk this time, or are you MCing?
Well, I'm pretty sure I'm giving a talk. Awesome. I don't know about the emceeing part. But I am excited to talk about inclusive architectures. This dot we've been, we obviously do a lot of Angular consulting. I feel like I'm always hiring an Angular developer, which, by the way, I am hiring another Angular developer.
I also ought to say that your company is also one of our sponsors this year, so that's great as well.
Yes, we're very excited to be one of the first our first time sponsoring AngularConnect this year. But as we've been, we recently launched this apprentice program, and we've been really focused on trying to help get women in tech, right? So this whole idea where, can we do consulting, and then can we kind of use that as a platform to help these student developers get new jobs, et cetera. But as we've been doing it, we've been really thinking about this thing we call the PAM stack. And it's basically related to, so PAM, it's process, abstractions, and mentorship. And it's this whole idea that if you start architecting your teams in a more inclusive way and start thinking about, it's like when you bring on more people than just senior developers, you have to start thinking about what are the different processes in place, what are the different abstractions we use to make the code base more available and accessible to junior developers to make them be productive. Mentorship, how do you change the framework of how you think about what, there's been all this drama about the 10x engineer. I don't know if you've seen that on Twitter, but everybody is the, 0.9x engineer, 10x engineer, et cetera, et cetera. But it's this whole idea of, maybe we should be thinking about senior developers as, making 10 people on a team 2 times better versus 1 developer being 10 times better. And that really helps enable that. So we've been trying to teach that in a way. And again, the reason is because not only does it help everybody on the team, but it really does provide a foundation to bring on more diverse people into your organization.
That's awesome, because when I looked at your talk originally, I thought I was slightly sort of what's the word? I had mixed opinions about it, because I knew you're such a technical person, and I'd really wanted you to give a technical talk. But I remember you just being so keen to give this talk, and you were saying this is like a real passion for you at the moment.
Yeah.
And I was not entirely understanding what you were talking about, but actually listening to you now, it really is fascinating. You've actually got a whole framework in place, and it feels like this is something that lots of the people coming to the conference would be able to benefit from in their own companies and try and implement. So is that one of the goals?
Yeah, I mean, it's really quite shocking, actually, because, I think because, everybody on our team is very heavily mentorship focused, right? They all believe in changing the ratio. They all believe in helping junior developers succeed, helping women in tech. And so some of the things, I think it's like that with any talk, even if you're giving a technical talk, you're like, nobody wants to hear about that. Everybody knows this thing. But even when we talk about abstractions or using state machines and, how those are beneficial, and how using something like a state machine can actually help junior developers have more meaningful work, because you're taking all the responsibility of, business logic, whatever, away from them, right? So they can be productive in their own way. How many aha moments go off of like, oh, I didn't think about that, or mentorship, like, oh wow, I didn't even think I should do that, or even process, right? Like a lot of developers are like, oh my gosh, process meetings, what is all this drama? But really, how process can actually enable you to be a better developer, so you don't have to think about the 10 million things all at once. So yeah, it's fun. I'm excited about it. Yeah, I know I usually do the technical talks, but this year I've been really excited about just trying to help get more people excited about the women in tech thing, inclusivity, etc. Yeah. And
I know also that Max was very keen to give a talk which was less technical as well. And maybe we can find some time during some lightning talks or something for him to talk about some of the aspects that he was wanting to propound in that as well. I think it's really important in a conference like this to try and find a balance. of both sort of technical and also things about humanity and humans and people, like, because developers are humans at the end of the day. And so it's not just about, I know Stephen's never heard of that before.
Why didn't someone tell me?
You've done okay so far. But that, for me, is what AngularConnect's all about, right? It's about the humans. You know, we want people to come together. We want people to watch the talks, but we upload the talks for free. What's the point of coming to the conference? It's really to have these human interactions. And we've also got some lunches, which I think, Tracy, you're going to be involved in one, which is also to do with making the industry more inclusive and diverse, which fits well with your topic.
Yeah, it's so nice because, you know, I float around all the different technologies and all the different communities and everything like that. But I always feel like with Angular, you know, it's, you can go to a conference and you can feel really out of place and just want to walk out the door. And I've, you know, even as a speaker, I felt that way sometimes in speaker rooms. But I feel like with Angular, you know, because it always comes from the talking, you know, because Igor and Brad and those folks always talk about inclusivity and making this, you know, a good place to be, right? And focuses on people first. Everybody knows, like, oh, this person seems a little bit awkward. Let's pull them in, you know. So, you know, that's really nice that our community is kind of has that ingrained in them.
So why don't we ask Stephen about this, because I know he's always been very keen on the community side of Angular. Tell us a bit about what you see coming up in the autumn with Angular, both not just necessarily as a framework, but also in terms of the team and what you see happening in the community.
Sure. And I mean, to really echo a lot of what Tracy's saying, there's really good business and technology reasons why this is so important, both focusing on diversity, inclusiveness, as well as community, because oftentimes we have teams that are building software that don't look like their user bases. Right? And when you've got this disconnect where you're not actually representing your users, you are going to be less effective at building software that solves problems. And so anytime we can do a better job of that, we should definitely look for those sorts of opportunities. And then kind of more broadly on the Angular team, we always talk about kind of our three values, right? Apps that users love to use, apps that developers love to build, and a community where everyone feels welcome, because community is why we've been successful to date, right? People that are joining and coming together to not only share best practices, not only to share technology tips, but to share governance tips, right? Like there's this whole human side of how we make choices. So like one of the things that I'm always talking to people about is like, how do we think about the relationships between different technologies? And some people think of it as like a war or a battle. And I think that's totally the wrong mental model, right? We are all trying to build technology. We're all trying to solve problems for users. And we can always learn from each other, right? Any sort of mindset where you think you need to do it alone or you need to do it better than someone else is fundamentally limited compared to what you could be doing if you said, okay, what can I take in from other folks around and what can I be building on top of and collaborating with? And so that's something that we are always looking for on the Angular team. And I think that's going to be one of the big themes you're going to hear about at AngularConnect. Is how do we come together to collaborate, whether that's on the Angular project itself, on all these thousands of ecosystem tools that are out there. I just saw a new one pop up that's kind of blowing up, and a lot of people are talking about like NGX template streams, which is a really cool idea for how do we make some of the events that happen in your templates more observable, more functional, which is just such a great idea. And that it really epitomizes this idea that you can collaborate, you can work with others, you can build cool technology. Even if you don't want to go and contribute to the Angular repo, there's huge opportunities for people. And I see every day that people are making like a career out of this, right? Like there are thousands at this point of Angular consultants out there that are helping others, that are building cool tools that people are falling in love with.
So I think that's really excellent. And I think that what we have to be aware of is that the Angular team is not just about building a framework. It's a much bigger thing than that. And we're all part of that ecosystem. And so if we can all move together in the right direction, then Angular is going to get better and better. But if we start sort of focusing in on our narrow little view, then we might actually end up battling with each other and not progressing Angular as a framework. Just talking about frameworks, by the way, a couple of people on the chat have been asking whether we should be using AngularJS or Angular. Anyone got a view on that? Or explaining what AngularJS versus Angular is?
Use
Sure.
whatever you love. That's my go ahead. Sorry, Austin.
So if you don't know, AngularJS is the older version that the team worked on from roughly kind of 2009 to 2013, 2014. And it obviously became a very, very popular. I think that all the first Angular Connects were all focused on that. Like we built up this huge community, we built up this huge momentum with these opinions, right, about like declarative templates and dependency injection, all these sorts of things. But what happened was, because it became so popular, we ended up seeing the hundreds of thousands, these millions of applications and developers being built and kind of coming together. And we saw a lot of kind of fundamental cracks in how do we do change detection? How do we do like watching? How do we understand the architecture of your application? How do you communicate across the applications? All these kind of fundamental cracks showed up. And then simultaneously at the same time, the web kept getting better, right? We had these new syntaxes, right? ES 2015 introduced modules and classes and all these really, really nice features that Angular kind of built facsimiles of that weren't standardized, that weren't a part of the ecosystem. And so the team, we decided to rewrite using the same sort of philosophies, but then take advantage of our knowledge that we built up across all these different applications, as well as kind of trying to adopt and work with the ecosystem using things like TypeScript, using things like shipping ES 2015 when possible, with the intent of solving problems for teams with the ecosystem rather than kind of fighting it.
Cool. So in terms of the ecosystem, one of the questions that was just asked is, and I'm going to punt this on out to the non-Googlers, is and how does Angular and React compare to each other? I mean, it's not a competition. I think it's clear that that's true, that they're not to be compared in terms of which is better. But I'm sure that Kim, Tracy, and Max have had experience on frameworks. What would you say is the difference between Angular and React?
So it's really more about what you're comfortable with, right? So I do Angular and React in Vue, and I switch off day to day or even in the same day sometimes. And with React, I mean, I love them all, okay? But with React, you're just having to make a lot more decisions, right? And you also have to be a much better JavaScript developer to be really good at React, because it is so much just a library, right? And something that's helping enable you, whereas Angular just gives you everything. So the thing I love about Angular is I don't have to think about, okay, what router am I going to use? Okay, importing something, or like what library do I use for material? What are the 3 different options for me out there? I can just say like, oh, well, the Angular team has done Angular material. So in my opinion, it's just up and I have all the things and I can be productive immediately, versus, there's a lot of great benefits about React. I'm building my next site in React, for example, but takes a long time for me to get set up. I mean, a long time. So I spent like, half a day getting set up, versus I was like, man, I wish I could just spin up the Angular app in like half an hour, done, be productive, even less, but.
Yeah, so someone in the chat suggested it's like comparing apples and oranges, which is probably reasonable. Yeah. Have you ever used React, Kim?
Yes, I have. Not nearly as much as I've used Angular, but one thing that I found with React is, again, to sort of Tracy's point about it's about what's your use case and what are you comfortable with. And I think one of the things that was great when I was using React, I could just spin up like a little component for something to demo something, show something really quickly without sort of spinning up an entire application, which can be really helpful. But also some of the things that I like about Angular is it comes with TypeScript, it comes with RxJS. It comes with the router, all of the things that sort of Tracy was talking about. These are things that are already there, and you don't have to think about going out and, do I need to add it? Should I add it? What are my options for adding these particular things? But yeah, it really is apples to oranges.
It's interesting you mention being able to spin up small things, because this is one of the potential opportunities that's coming from the Ivy work that's been going on. Maybe Stephen or Jerry have a view on that. I know it's not quite there yet, but this seems to, I think, is one of the goals of moving forward with Ivy. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely one of the long-term goals to make it easier to build simple and small things. So we, as a lot of people know, we have this project Ivy that we've been working on for a while that we're hoping to get everyone over to kind of as quickly as possible here in the next release or so. And it unlocks a lot of things, right? It's a refactoring behind the scenes on our side that hopefully is painless for everyone. But then once we land that change and everyone's kind of taking advantage of this new architecture that we have under the hood without any breaking changes, then we can start exploring those sorts of very, very cool ideas that a lot of folks are interested in. It was funny, I had 3 conversations last week about people that built component level lazy loading libraries. So there's definitely a lot of needs out there for those sorts of capabilities.
And regarding Ivy, one of the questions we've had is actually when will Ivy be released as the official renderer? What's the plan about that?
So I won't make any claims about the future. So the future is uncertain, but I think our hope at this point is still to make it the default in version 9. But if you're interested in Ivy, you should definitely try it out right now. So we actually released the opt-in preview. So if you just flip a single flag in one of your TS configs where you say enable Ivy true, basically you're now running Ivy. And so there's a lot of applications that we've heard folks are actually already switching over to Ivy. And this is an option for you. So what we want people to do is to give that a try. And if we break you at all, let us know so we can go fix it before we flip this default over for everybody.
Yeah, this is something close to my heart at the moment. I'm seeing I'm doing a lot of work in terms of trying to make things work really well for when people switch over to Ivy. And it's quite an exciting roller coaster ride at the moment. But hopefully by the autumn, by AngularConnect, we should have a really solid story for everyone, I think.
Can I add?
Please do, Max.
Yeah, like Angular versus React, because I've been into this topic for I think 2 years now, because I really like to get deep, and I'm not sure it's fair to say that when you compare Angular and React, you compare apples to oranges, and I think this is a good thing to compare frameworks. I don't think we should define best, like trying to find best. This is wrong, because yeah, they all have their usages, but we still should compare them, I think. There is actually a very great talk, like amazing talk, done by Ivan Vue, who's the Vue.js founder, and I don't know if I can share a link somewhere. He gave a talk at JSConf, just Asia, just a few months ago, where he actually compared, not specifically Angular and React, but all frameworks. He split them into different categories, and he compared them in terms of scope and rendering engine. And this is the criteria where you actually can compare. Like Angular has a lot broader scope, has a lot more packages, big infrastructure versus React that has just rendering engine, and then everything else is supplied by outside developers and rendering engine. So it's yeah. Oh, somebody already shared this talk. So yeah, I definitely recommend everyone to watch it. And he says also that there is no best. But for us as developers to become engineers, not Angular developer or React developer, but engineers who can think in abstractions and architectural components of framework, to get down to the constituent parts of every framework and understand how they work together.
Cool.
Yeah.
I think you're absolutely right that being able to look into the internals of the frameworks and understand how they do what they do gives you a lot of insight into how to use them and what they're doing well. And it's certainly something that I think the Angular team will always be keen on looking at what other people are doing making use of things that work for them. So we're kind of running out of time. We've had a handful of questions. There's one more quick one to Stephen, which was, are there going to be any updates about the prototyping tool that you talked about recently?
Sure. So I will not commit to any updates there. There's definitely a longer term plan that I don't have any updates on that one. One thing that I do want to talk about in that I think meets the same need that folks are looking for is there's actually a team, the folks at Angular, Acveo, they're actually working on a similar UI building tool, and that one I think they're hoping to ship relatively soon. So I would definitely take a look at Acveo and some of the tools that they have, because they see this need for designers and prototypers as well, and they've started shipping a bunch of code. So
and
good things to see.
That some of them might be coming to AngularConnect. So if you're there, you can grab them somewhere along the corridors and find out what they're up to. So before we sign off, I'd just be interested, for those of you who've been to AngularConnect before, what would you say to potential attendees are the great things about AngularConnect that means that they should come? What did you enjoy while you were there? Who wants to go first? Kim?
After party, make sure to bring a costume.
A banana shake costume, or maybe a superhero.
Yeah, well, I mean, the after parties are really amazing. I think if you're, everyone's friendly, so you can, if you see one of us, come up and say hi. If you're feeling out of place, we're happy to guide you somewhere. There's Angular Girls, so that's a free workshop to teach women Angular. So if you want to learn, come learn. If you want to mentor, come mentor. There's so many opportunities. Get on Twitter. That's where all the conversation's happening, even before the conference. But just get to know everybody.
Great. Kim, you were going to say something.
Yeah, so the community is my favorite thing about AngularConnect. I really love the European Angular community too, just because there's so many countries in that area that all come to this conference, and I love meeting people from other places. Also, the other thing that I really liked when I went to AngularConnect was the idea that there were quiet spaces. So it can be a little bit overwhelming. There's so many talks going on. There's so many people. But there was like meditation and quiet rooms where you could just relax. And I actually really liked connecting with people in those rooms too. And just because, like you said, the talks are sort of all put online, and you can come up to the speakers afterwards and talk to them. So you don't have to feel like you're missing something if you just need a moment to sort of take a breather. And I really
Kim, are you bugging people in the quiet space?
Hopefully not.
So this year we have two kinds of quiet spaces. So we're going to have a sort of an area which is very informal, where you can hang out and chat with people. There might be some arcade machines and stuff going on, but kind of fun little place to be. And then we're going to have another area which is even more chill, where you can literally just go and have some space to yourself, quiet time. So hopefully we can cover all of the aspects of what people want out of the conference. But it's really important to us that if you are finding it a little bit too much, or you just want to have a break, that you have to have somewhere that you can go and have a different feel, and get away from all the excitement. What about you, Max? What did you enjoy last year?
I think I like everything, not a particular thing.
Good one. Well done.
The venue was great. And yeah, people, I think at any conference, people is the most important thing. And it's great that you can just approach anyone and ask a question, because the difficult to do with any other tool like online. And personal engagement, because I've been talking to some people online for a year, and conferences is where I can meet them. It's a different type of connection. Right?
Yeah, for sure. That's definitely what I love. So Stephen and Joey, Stephen, you've been to plenty of AngularConnects. You've probably got lots of views, and Joey, you've been to the one. What were your? I
can take my experience and apply it to what I think now. Just from what I observed is the chance for us as the Angular team to really hear from the community, because like has been said, like Twitter is where a ton of the conversation is happening, but like we can't really get like the nuanced information that we need in what it's 240 characters now. And that sometimes a conversation is better for that. So the opportunity to actually find out from our users what the pain points are, and find out, like what helps everybody contribute to Angular in whatever way that is, whether it's being like a mentor for people, opening issues, actually like creating PRs, whatever participation that they have in the community, what we can be doing to facilitate that, and helping make Angular better for everybody. I got to observe that happen when I went before, and now I'll get to be a part of that, which I'm super excited for. And AngularConnect, I feel does a good job of providing that space and opportunity for us.
Awesome.
So for me, there's so many different things. I mean, I definitely need to call it the hallway track, right? Like even if you're not attending sessions, just have some conversations in the hallway. It's super valuable. But in particular, I'll call it the panels, because I participated on a lot of panels, and I've seen a lot of panels, and oftentimes they get off track, they get derailed. But I've seen that the AngularConnect panels seem to be very topic driven. They're very well moderated, and it feels like you can very quickly answer a lot of questions for a kind of a large number of people in a very kind of highly engaging way. And so that was definitely a lot of fun. And I got to switch between a British and American accent in the middle of one. So that was always silly.
So you'll be happy to know the we were just doing afternoon. If you'll be able to release the program in the next week or two.
What am I going to be happy for?
Sorry, can you
you cut out.
Secret. You can't. I got censored by the team. No, so we did some programming this afternoon, and putting all the talks and everything into place. And you'll be very happy to hear that the panels are still there. We definitely will have panels, including a security-based one for Kim. There was one.
Is a security-based panel just Kim as a panel? Do we have other people ready to participate as well?
We have at least a couple more talks about security this year. So that'll be a really interesting one. And I think it's a great topic for people to dig into, like on top of just seeing the talk. It's good to have these conversations. So there's one last thing I just noticed on the chat where someone said, do I need to bring anything to AngularConnect? Although you don't need to bring anything, if you want to do some of the mini workshops, which are, we have 4 mini workshops this year, it's helpful to have a laptop to work from, either your own or a buddy's or something. So if you want to do the mini workshops, which are a really good hands-on interactive way of getting into Angular, then do bring along one of those. You can just sit and listen and follow along, but it's more fun to do it. So anyway, thank you so much to all of you. Once again, I need to say that we are in the new venue this year, which is in Westminster. This means at lunchtime you can pop out and go across the road and see Big Ben and maybe wave to whichever Prime Minister we have at that point in time. Or you could join in with the climate change protesters who will be probably hanging around the square. But there's obviously all of the amazing London city right on your doorstep there. So that's really exciting. And I'm not sure if I mentioned it at the beginning, but as a special celebration of this webinar, we're going to have a 10% discount code for anyone who's watching. If you haven't already bought your tickets for AngularConnect, you can, I think we're going to email out to all of the live attendees to this webinar, but also we'll put the code on the YouTube video recording. And I think that's a time limited one until next Friday. So if you haven't got your tickets already, this week coming is perfect timing. So thank you very much to Kim, Tracy, Max, Joey, and Stephen. It's been really great chatting with you, and thank you for giving up your time. And we're looking forward to seeing you in London in September.
Thanks for having me.
Excited.
Thanks, everybody.